Deaths in Glenmorach Manor, a fiction novel. Written by Shirley, read by Sir Lawrence Olivier. This audiobook was narrated using synthetic voice technology provided by 11 Labs. Chapter 22. I made my way back to Glenmorach Manor that evening, and Mr. Morrison came running towards me, his face ashen. "Mr. Owen, you must come quickly. It's Alan. He's been attacked." "Where is he now?" I asked Mr. Morris. "Dr. Sutherland is taking care of him now. He's staying in one of the rooms in the servants' quarters," said Mr. Morrison while leading me and John toward the servants' quarters. I didn't wait for further explanation. Without a word to John, I followed him to the servants' quarters. "Tell me how this happened," I asked Mr. Morrison. "I will bring you the workers who brought him to the manor, sir. Let him tell you what exactly happened." Mr. Morrison called the one worker who found Alan and brought him to me. I asked the worker to tell me about the incident. He said Alan was found in the vineyard lying unconscious and his body sprawled across the dirt, a pool of blood staining the earth around him. Apparently Alan was stabbed using a sharp object, but the workers said they couldn't find the blade or any sharp object in the surrounding location where they found Alan. When we found him, he was still breathing, even though he had passed out. And then we brought him to the manor, the worker told me. Mr. Morrison added, "The moment they rushed him back to the manor, Mr. Robert was already under Dr. Sutherland's care. Without hesitation, the doctor stepped in to treat Alan as soon as he saw the severity of his injuries. Dr. Sutherland said abruptly as he stepped out of Alan's room, he was losing a lot of blood. The wound on his stomach was quite deep, but fortunately it didn't damage any internal organs. It's a bloody gash, likely inflicted by a sharp blade. I'll need to keep an eye on him for a while. It's best for him to stay in the manor while I'm also monitoring Mr. Robert. Alan is not yet well enough to return home," he explained. I nodded, but as the doctor talked, my mind raced. First Robert, now Alan. Someone was targeting the people closest to the Wallace family, and whoever it was knew exactly where to strike and when to strike. This was no random series of events. Whoever had attacked him had intended to kill him, but Robert and Alan had somehow survived. That evening, while Alan was being treated and rested, Lady Eleanor appeared at the servants' quarters in a flurry. She had always been a quiet presence in the house, often keeping to herself. But there was something different about her tonight, an urgency in her movements, and the soft, almost desperate look in her eyes as she entered the room where Alan lay unconscious. I was standing nearby, keeping an eye on the events unfolding when I noticed her approach. Her usual composure was gone, replaced with a raw worry that I had not expected to see from the quiet, reserved Lady Eleanor. I watched her enter the room. The door was slightly ajar, and she took great care to keep a low profile. Her face was clouded with distress as she sat on a chair beside Alan's bed, her hand hovering over his. With a broken voice, she whispered, "Alan, please wake up. I'm very concerned about you." As if sensing her presence, Alan's eyelids fluttered open and her fingers shook as they touched the side of his face. After a moment of unfocused stare, he blinked and caught sight of her. A slight grin, tense with pain, tugged at the corner of his lips. His voice was raspy. "Do not cry, my sweet lady. I'll be fine. I'll be fine, I promise," said Alan as he grasped her palm and kissed it. Her face softened, and she quickly wiped away a tear before taking his hand in hers. "I thought I might lose you, Alan. I don't know what I'd do." Alan squeezed her hand, the faintest flicker of reassurance in his eyes. "I'm not going anywhere, my lady." It was then that Mrs. Thompson, the head of the servants, appeared at the door. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the scene. The two of them together, the quiet, unspoken bond between them. Mrs. Thompson's disapproval was immediate and clear, though she said nothing at first. She stood at the door, watching with an expression that was both stern and disapproving. After a moment, she stepped forward. Lady Eleanor, I'm afraid I'll need to take care of Alan now. The doctor has ordered that he remain under observation. Lady Eleanor looked up, her face flushed with emotion. I understand, she said quietly, but her voice was thick with unspoken words. Mrs. Thompson nodded curtly, but as she moved to help Alan settle in bed, I could see from a distance outside the room the tension in her posture. It was clear that she did not approve of Lady Eleanor's presence, especially not this late in the evening. As the housekeeper was pulling a chair closer to Alan's bedside, I noticed her sharp, discerning gaze flickering between the two of them. Lady Eleanor hesitated for a moment longer before standing up and brushing past Mrs. Thompson, her back straight, her face now masked with a semblance of composure. She left the room without another word, but her eyes lingered on Alan, a silent promise before she disappeared into the corridor. I couldn't help but wonder what Lady Eleanor's relationship with Alan truly was. It was clear there was something more romantic going on between them. As I stood there watching the interaction unfold, my thoughts turned again to the increasing number of attacks. First Robert, now Alan, and all of it felt too calculated, too precise to be the work of a random stranger. I had every intention of asking Alan about the attack, about how he found Robert in the cellar, how he ended up getting attacked in the vineyard, and whether he had any insights into the strange string of events plaguing the Wallace family. I had to speak to him, especially now that he was recovering from what could have been a fatal wound. As I approached the room, however, I paused, hearing voices from within. The low, murmured tones of Mrs. Thompson drifted through the slightly opened door, catching my attention. I leaned slightly closer, careful not to be noticed, and soon enough their conversation became clearer. Mrs. Thompson's voice was sharp, filled with warning. You should end it, Alan. Your secret relationship with Lady Eleanor, it's going to be your undoing. You don't want to end up dead like Rosie, do you? Look at you now. Lucky you're still alive after what happened today. Her tone expressed a strong sense of dislike. I felt a chill creep up my spine when the name Rosie was mentioned. I know how to take care of myself. You don't need to interfere with my life, Alan replied. His voice was tense and defensive. Mrs. Thompson's response was a harsh hiss, a sound that seemed to carry both personal venom and sorrow. I'm telling you, look at what happened to Rosie. She was just a servant. And what happened to her? She's dead. And why? Because of her forbidden relationship with Mr. Robert. What was she thinking back then? And now you. Do you really think Lord Wallace would ever approve of that? Mrs. Thompson continued, her voice dripping with disdain. What chance does someone like you have with a young lady of this house? It would only bring you trouble, just like it did for Rosie. There was a long silence, and I imagined Alan clenching his fists in frustration. I could almost feel the tension in the room. Just leave me alone. Alan's voice was low, but there was an edge to it now, like a warning. Mrs. Thompson wasn't done, though. Perhaps Lord Wallace himself had someone kill Rosie. Do you ever think about that? Her words hit like a hammer, ringing with an unsettling truth. Rosie was nobody, just a servant who dared to reach for something she couldn't have. Take that as a lesson, Alan. If you're smart, you'll listen to me. End things with Lady Eleanor before it's too late. There was the sound of a sharp intake of breath, and I could sense that Alan was done with the conversation. Just go, Alan muttered. The door creaked open, and Mrs. Thompson stepped out. Her face was a mask of calm disapproval, but I could see the storm behind her eyes. She didn't even glance in my direction. I held my breath until she turned the corner, disappearing into the servants' wing. It was only then that I knocked at Alan's door as if nothing had just transpired. My mind was spinning with questions, but I couldn't let on that I had overheard everything. I needed to keep my investigation intact, to keep Alan from suspecting that I was privy to information I shouldn't have. Alan's voice came through the door. Come in. I opened the door slowly, stepping inside to find Alan sitting up in bed, propped up with pillows. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp, watching me with a guarded expression. "How are you doing so far, Alan?" "I'm sorry for what happened to you," I said, trying to sound casual. He sighed, then answered me, "Just like what you see, sir. I'm just glad I'm still alive," he uttered weakly, his voice barely audible. "Yes, I understand how agonizing that wound must be for you. Listen, I do not want to take up too much of your resting time, but I have some questions for you." "Go ahead," he said, but his hand was resting absently on the bandage covering his stomach, and his voice was distant. He moved slowly and cautiously, and the wound was fresh. "I need to know how you found Robert earlier today. Did you see what was happening before his attack in the cellar?" I spoke in a steady voice while sitting near his bed. I was cautious not to hint that I had overheard his earlier chat with Mrs. Thompson. Alan looked at me, his brow furrowing, his gaze dropping to his hands. At first, I only heard something fall inside the wine cellar. Then I found Mr. Robert lying on the cellar floor, with blood flowing from the back of his head. I immediately realized he had just been attacked by someone. Hearing what sounded like running footsteps, I quickly started chasing after them. As I ran after Mr. Robert's attacker, I shouted to one of the workers there to help Mr. Robert and take him back to Glenmorach Manor. Meanwhile, I kept running toward the footsteps heading to the vineyard. That's when I was stabbed from behind, and I fell unconscious. After that, I don't remember anything else, and, well, you know what happened after that. So, you visited the cellar this morning? Is that something you normally do? As I know, you work in the stable. I asked them with my voice, tone full of curiosity. I needed to talk to Mr. Robert this morning to discuss the horse's regular checkup. It is not something unusual for me to meet him in the cellar, as that's the first thing he does every morning. Okay, and now what about Anthony? I continued, leaning forward slightly. Do you know he's been missing? No one seems to know where he's gone. Have you seen him? Or do you know anything about where he might be? He squinted his eyes as if trying to remember something. I haven't seen him, sir. I don't know where he went. If I did, I'd tell you. But honestly, I don't know any more than you do. But I guess you can ask the workers in the winery. I spoke to him. We did. Nobody seems to see him for the last 2 days. Well, if you think of anything at all, please let me know. He nodded, but didn't say anything more. As I closed the door behind me, my mind raced. Mrs. Thompson's conversation with Alan earlier had thrown a new wrench into the investigation. If she was right, then Rosie's death was such a warning. A warning that someone was willing to go to extreme lengths to protect the reputation of the Wallace family. But for some reason, the attacker was also targeting the noble heir this morning, Robert Wallace. I had a lot more to figure out, but the truth was getting harder to uncover with every interrogation. Everyone has a motive. Before I left the servants' quarters, I remembered the blade. Where was the blade that was being used to stab him? Someone already took and hid the evidence.